Original was it was. Ready? It is. Okay. So you know the first question. Put your mic down. So if you first of all, those of you that overwintered and you haven't been in your hives yet, the last couple of months, chances are the next time that you're able to crack the lid, all your bees are gone and you wonder where they went. They went to the trees, because the natural instinct of Apis mellifera in springtime is to swarm. That's how they continue their species, as they commonly known as bees in the trees. So how many of you have done splits so far? How many have done successful splits so far?
Hey, you got one thing. How many of you have had your hives swarm so far?
Yeah, so, all right, cool. Yeah. Was anybody there when their hive did swarm? That is probably one of the most, that experience there is exciting, because the air itself is electrified with all the bees. If last year was very swarmy year. We had in one of our yards, and it was kind of a holding yard. I had way too many there, and we were trying to work them to get them so they wouldn't swarm. But while we were there, we had three colonies swarm, and a couple of really big ones. And it is, so the whole entire atmosphere is just like electricity charged, and bees are by the thousands everywhere, and pretty neat, pretty cool. In fact, we had, so one swarm that went up into a tree. I said, okay, we'll grab that one by the time we're done. If it's still there, we're gonna shake it and we'll take it. And while we're waiting there, here's another one. It took off, and they gathered together. So two swarms went together, and it was way up there. It was like 25, 30 feet up in the air. And so it started to be about a basketball. And by the time it was done, it was good sized beach ball, just a big old ball of bees. And, you know, a three boxes of bees to shake down. So the first one might have been a virgin swarm, which is a secondary swarm. And the one after that, I'm sure, was Queen Right, and it was massive. So you never forget things like that. Yeah.
I had something interesting happen in the swarm that I saw go out this year. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it happen. I'm working on this hive, and about 2 pallets down, I hear it going off. And so they all take off in the air, and I'm watching them to see where they're going to go and land. And they don't seem to be going anywhere. And I walk over there, and they're all up in the air everywhere, but they're not going anywhere. They're staying right there. So I went back and I kept inspecting the hive I was inspecting. Then I looked over and there's almost no bees. And I'm like, oh no, they flew off. So I went walking out in the hayfield to find it. And when I turned around, the whole front of the hive was covered in bees. The bees went out to swarm, but evidently the queen didn't go with them. So after about 15 minutes, they all started going back in the hive. So I kept inspecting hives, and eventually, 99% of those found their way back in the colony. And then I split it right then. So I knew, but I've never seen that happen, for them to go out and come back. It's really interesting.
Yep. Yep. So what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about different types of splits and what to do when your hive swarms. But before we get to that, let's go through, talk to our officers and see what we have. For our treasurer, we have.
So our PayPal account, we have $195.30. Our Alpine, we have $4,373.31. We're totaling at $4,565.61. So we did have an expense last month, which is paying for the Colorado State Beekeepers Association membership. So if you had paid before the end of March, you were on the list that got sent over there. So then you'll be on their email list.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, I think that, isn't there an event going on
Yes.
coming up? Are you gonna talk about?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Colorado State Beekeepers Association has their summer bee college in Rifle this year. And it's June 13th through 14th. And you do need to pre-register. So it's on our events list with the registration link. And I think they just sent something out today or yesterday.
If you can attend this one, I would encourage you to do it. Dr. Jamie Ellis will be there. And he is the lead entomologist out of the University of Florida. He's probably one of the most sought after speakers in the nation. And so Jamie Ellis is, it'd be worth your time, okay? As well as it's hands-on, it's a commercial beekeeper, lets you go through number of hives and answer all kinds of questions. Plus they have lunch, I think. So
Thank you. Is anybody here going to the State Bee Association? Okay.
Yeah, 13th.
When the meeting come to me, have you already paid?
No.
Because I might be able to get you in for free. They wanted our group to help do some things to help set up for lunch. And if you do that, then they're gonna let you in for free. So at the time that last I talked to the state president, I was the only one going. But if there's more people going, just let me know before you do it, and I'll call up and I say, hey, I'll have a list of these people that, you know, that are gonna come. Do you need help?
how much work you gonna make them do?
Both days they have to set up tables and help serve lunch. That's for getting the whole conference free.
Okay. Cool. Anything else on our yes?
Yeah. So, but yeah, so with Jamie Ellis, if you can't make it to the thing, he also, if you listen to podcasts, he does have a podcast. It's called Two Bees and a Podcast. So him and another lady, her name is Amy Vu, who's like the extension outreach for the University of Florida. They do a weekly podcast. And it's been going on for about 3 years. And last year they really went into depth, like every month what to do. Now this kind of Florida based, so you got to offset our seasons a little bit, but you can still get a rough idea on exactly what to do. And then they also have a Q&A at the end. So they call it Stump the Chump. Jamie thinks he's the chump. So they do a pretty good job. So other than that, thanks to the people that have sent me pictures. If you go start getting onto the website, you'll notice that pink hive and a lot of the old pictures are going away slowly but surely. So I still need a few more. Need some pictures from, like, if you go to any events or anything like that, we could use some pictures there to do that. I'm getting swarm pictures up. Swarm wise, it's about the same as last year. We're running about 20-25 swarms so far for the year, which is about the same thing we're at last year. And it's real hit and miss. It all depends on the weather. I'll get 3, 4, 5 in one day and then nothing for a week. And then it hits again. So this weather's probably knocked them back, but as soon as it warms back up again, be ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
So
Storm season gonna be winding down here at the end of May, so, but if you're still, and if you're out of town, and you say, well, I'm out of town and I won't be around to get the swarm, actually, it'll benefit you, because if we get a call from Rifle, if we get a call from Delta or Montrose, and that's where you're from, then that's who gets contacted. So contact the person who lives in that area. We'll get calls Ridgeway.
yeah, Ridgeway, we got one from just last week, we got one from Eagle. So it kind of varies every year. Like last year, it was real hard and heavy in like Carbondale area and Carbondale Basalt. This year, it seems to be, we're getting a bunch of Montrose, and the one lady who's in our club that's in Montrose basically said, I'm too busy. So if you happen to want to go to Montrose, let me know. Otherwise, if I don't get them, Tracy gets a call and he hands them out to the Delta beekeepers. So we want to try to make sure we're doing everything we can to make sure those bees get into a good home before they become a nuisance.
Who, along those lines, who has construction background and would like to be educated on how to do cutouts? Anybody? Cutout, such as these that moved into a soffit or behind some siding, or if you would like, if you have some construction knowledge, then I will teach you how to do cutouts. It's a very, you have to have some very specific tools. One of those being a B vacuum, a regular vacuum will not work. Couple things like an infrared camera, a scope. There's a few very specific tools that you'll need, but if you would like to do that, I've got a lot of calls and haven't been able to do them because they're so busy. And so I would be happy to train somebody, even loan you some of those tools until you get your own. But it's not just for free. You charge the customer to do that work. And you don't have to put it back together, but you need to know how to take it apart so it doesn't destroy something. Okay, so there's a lot of information there. If you're interested in that, come see me afterwards and we'll walk down that road.
Yeah, right now we're getting a lot of the swarms that are out in the trees, but start coming June, July. They start becoming a lot of cutouts because it's the ones that we didn't get called on, and the next thing you know, they've moved into the wall. And now they want them out.
Yep.
So.
Anything else from media officer,
Not that I can think of at the moment.
Vice President?
I usually announce the Delta Beekeepers meeting, but that was actually this last Monday because of a hall that was already booked, so we had it last week, but it's always the third Monday of the month at 6:30 at the Oddfellows Hall on Route 92 in Delta. That club too is getting kind of large, but we're kind of getting, but we have a big room, so we don't have to worry about moving. We're getting kind of big for this room. But I do want to now announce that I had a road show on Saturday. I see several faces that were there. It was really successful. We had 16 people there, and it was split almost exactly half and half between Delta and here. It was like 8 and 7 or something like that. And then we had one person who was in both clubs and one person that was not affiliated with any club. But then wasn't really sure how they found out about it, but they showed up and they got to get my bees. But anyway, we broke up into 3 groups of 5, and I even had some help with that. Thank you, Stacy, wherever you are. Thank you very much. And really had a good class. A lot of people were happy because it was brand new people and they got to see brood and eggs, and we helped them learn how to find eggs and a lot of real basic things. And they were really, really happy with that. So we'll have another one next year. It will not be in April. 2 years in a row, I tried to do it in April. And it's nice and sunny, and the week that I go to do it, it turns cold and we can't open the hive. So it'll be in May of next year too. I don't like doing road shows in the fall because the bees are mean, and new people don't want to be, you don't want to try to introduce new people with mean bees. So it'll be next May before we have the next one. That's all I got.
Okay, let's do, talk about splits, different types of splits. Tracy's gonna do walk-away split.
Okay, as the name implies, you walk away. Yes, you don't do a lot, okay? There's 2 different, what is a true walk-away split? Almost nobody does it anymore. Commercial people might still do it. And that is you go through your yard and you have 2 big boxes and you crack this one off and you put it on another bottom board and put a lid, inner and an outer cover, and you go about your business. That is a true walk-away split. Most of the time, half of your brood's in this box and half of your brood's in this box because the bottom is kind of centered between the 2. And so that works fine. When you do that, it doesn't matter which one has the queen. Whichever one has the queen will just keep going, and the one that doesn't will make one. What most people do now is called a modified walk-away split, which is almost the same. The first step is the same. You have another bottom board over here. You move this one over here. The difference is you take enough time to go in here and find eggs in both of these. As long as you have eggs in both of these, it's called a modified walk-away split. Both of these will be fine. They will make a queen. Whichever one doesn't have a queen will make a queen. I don't do walkway splits because I have 3 boxes, so if I do a walkway split, I can make 3 hives out of it, but I generally have more hives than I want, so I generally don't do these kind of splits. I try to make them and it's just that easy, just separating the boxes. That's why it's called a walkaway split, because they go by and they just take this off and sit down and walk away. Put a cover on it and they're done. So those are the easy, that's the easy one. Now Jason's gonna go over the one that you gotta kind of look for the queen and you gotta make sure things are done right.
So
One question on that,
Okay,
should there be a distance between the boxes?
no, it doesn't matter. You can set it right next to it.
Okay,
Because these bees, all of your workers, all of your foragers are gonna come back to the same location. But the idea of a walkway split is that it's very, very easy and you're done. The nurse bees that are in the one that you take that doesn't have the queen, they're gonna make a new queen and they're gonna huddle around the brood. They may not, the one that you move somewhere else, even if it's right next to it, they don't have any foragers. It's a good idea to feed this one, but you don't have to. If you're doing a modified walkway, when you get in here, you'll see food. And they got a couple frames of honey. You're good, because then by the time they eat that up, some of these nurse bees will have become foragers and they'll stop foraging.
So that's the problem. The biggest issue is the foragers fly back. So if you did not start with equal numbers, then you're gonna lose your field force. You lose your field force, then you make sure that you have enough honey and resources in the one that does not have the queen. Now, here's the one that you took. Now, the field force is gonna go back to the original location, correct? And all that's left is nurse bees who is not foraging, so you have to have enough resources to hold them over. So the greatest success on doing splits, and you're gonna have them raise their own queen, greatest success is taking the queen instead of leaving the queen. You take the queen, it will hold more bees. It will hold even foragers because their queen's there. That queen mandibular pheromone is the most powerful pheromone in the hive. So when we do any kind of splits, especially walkway in the same yard, we make sure we have the queen. Here's the mentality behind it. If you have, when a hive swarms, the queen goes with the swarm. And so that's the natural process. And what you're doing is you're trying to take the swarming out of them. So if you take the queen, they thought they have swarmed. And then you won't have any issues with the ones that's left behind. This is gonna have the majority of bees when you leave in that same location, because all the foragers are coming back. And so this one, if it's got too many bees, chances are it's gonna swarm again, unless you took the queen. You take the queen, wherever you're gonna set it, then it takes that swarming issue, it takes that swarming desire out of them, because the queen is gone. The queen will hold more of the bees. And what I found, the further away you can go, the better, but it really doesn't matter unless you're like 3 miles. A lot of people say, well, I don't know, I have a friend, but they don't really want bees permanently. Here is a good way to do it, is that you find that friend that is 3 miles away or more, and you ask them, can I bring some bees over for a week? They're only gonna be there a week. And that's where you take your split. And the queen goes with them. And then all those foragers will stay, because it's, when you're taking them, what you do is, if you wanna lock them down, and I just said, these are just 2 lids. They're migratory lids, so it's a little bit different. You can use a bottom board if you are able to shut off the entrance, but a lid without any other opportunities of openings just like that. It's a double lid. They're locked down. I'll strap it and go. Now, you don't want to leave this in the sun, and you want to do it quickly. You don't want to, this is the last thing you do. You split them, you got the queen, and what I do is I'll sit there and I'm looking for the queen as I'm wading through it. Now, chances are the queen is going to be in the top box in that split. If you're doing it, especially in the morning or at the 10 o'clock before noon, she's usually up at the top looking for a place to lay, unless you're already honey bound, but usually that, and so you're gonna find her, and just like I normally do, I have an empty rim when I start, and I'll just start walking through, trying to where she's at. And I'll look, both sides. Usually the outside's honey, so, but we're gonna take this whole box anyway. So just go through, and I'm looking for the queen. Also looking for eggs. Because with eggs and larvae, you want, as he said, you want eggs and larvae both sides. You want, especially the one that doesn't have a queen. They've got, if they don't have any eggs, and here's like, well, they had larvae, they had a 4-day-old larvae, won't that work? Usually they don't know they're queenless, at least for a day. Sometimes 2 days. I've tried to introduce a queen after the 3rd day, and they still didn't know they were queenless, and they tried to ball her. After the 4th day, they accepted her as I'm introducing another queen. So it's usually 2 days. Now, and that's the problem, if you don't have eggs, which all I had was, but I did have some 4-day-old larvae, and that's what they use. When we're grafting, we use 4-day-old larvae to graft. When we're grafting queens, that's the age that you, but if that 5-day-old larvae is all they have, it is too old, and they can't raise a queen out of a 5-day-old larva. And so they don't even know they're queenless until that 2nd day. And if they don't have eggs, then all they have is old larva that is unable to raise a queen. So you're looking for eggs in both sides. Nod your head, yes. Okay.
We have a question on Zoom.
Okay, yep.
It says, what if you have swarm cells in both boxes? Do you do a walk away, or do you make a 2-frame nuke with the old queen and let the other 2 boxes do their thing with the queen cells?
I will take the queen cells and put it in the queenless side. Take the queen.
Yeah.
Leave the queen cells.
That's what he's saying. Take the queen and make a 2-frame nuke and then split the cells between the other boxes. So you
Yeah.
basically end up with 3.
If you want to do 3,
What-
if you want to do 1-framers, do 1-framers. We're talking about a walk away split, not making nooks. There's a lot of issues with making nooks. You can make, in the spring, we'll make 10 hives out of a double deep if we have enough bees. If you want just, 2-framers. So we don't want to get into that right now. We're just doing the walkaways, but that's, we go down that rabbit hole and we're gonna confuse some people. So what we're doing is, but if you do see queen cells, we'll get there. But we're just as simple as it can be. Take the queen, leave eggs. Taking the queen doesn't have to have eggs.
Here she is.
Okay. Oh, there she is. Sweet. And, that must be a beautiful Saskatraz gator tail. I like that one there. So you're real careful now. You know where she's at. So then you can put these in, and by now you got a lot of bees everywhere. And so you went through, you got everybody happy. They're in there. I shake this out, boom, 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 and before I know she's in there, there's some bees, don't want them to escape. I'll throw the lid on real quick, getting ready to strap it, ready to go. But before I do that, I'm gonna check to see if I got eggs in the one I'm leaving. And make sure this one doesn't need resources as much because this is gonna have the field force. And my friend said, yeah, you can bring the bees, but if they're there more than a week, then I'm, gonna sell them. So, okay, I'll just a week and then we're good. And we immediately take them to where they're gonna go. If you're not gonna do a double lid, you got a bottom board, you can lock them down with a screen. And that's okay too. Just, what I explained is you cut some metal screen, like it goes on a screen door or screen on the window. Don't use the fiberglass or the plastic.
Nylon.
Use just metal screen, cut it the length, and accordion, make an accordion out of it. You can slide it in there, it'll expand. And that's a good way to vent it, so they got some ventilation. It's not as critical, but if it's not real warm, if you got 80+ degrees, then, and you got a lot of bees, then you can melt them. You can, what we call nuke them. And they'll just, so you need some ventilation, but if you don't have that ability or that, but we do this a lot, okay, a lot, and then crank them and go. If, so anyway, you got half and half. And this queen, and she goes to a different location. If it's only over here, you don't have to worry about double lidding it. You just take the whole thing over there. Your field force is gonna fly back. And so what I do, I know the field force is gonna fly back, so I will boost this one with a couple extra frames of brood. If I got 8 frames all together, then I just 4 and 4, maybe 5 and 3. But if I got 10 frames of brood, I'll put a little bit more brood with the one that's staying. Okay, the one that is staying, I'll make sure that they have more brood than the queen. Queen side doesn't need the brood, but the one that's staying is gonna need some numbers because it's gonna be a month. If you're expecting them to raise their own queen, you got 1 month before that queen is gonna be mated and laying. Don't get too anxious about that because you get ahead of yourself, especially if you're digging in them. Sure way to kill a virgin queen is to pester them too much. Anything that goes wrong in the hive, the bees think it's the queen's fault. She gets blamed for everything. Bad weather, it's the queen. The queen's got bad weather going on, let's kill her. Make another one. If you're digging in there and all the time you're moving, more agitation, more stress, higher levels of stress, and they'll ball a queen for many different reasons, but so it's the worst thing you can do is go digging in one that you're trying to mate a queen too early. So let them do their thing a month later. And that's kind of the caveat, because if you wait too long, you can have a laying worker issue, but you got to give her time. You can look in 2 weeks after the fact to see if there is any queen cells that have hatched. And that peanut will be chewed out on the bottom, not on the side. If it's chewed out on the side, they had another queen sting that cell and the bees chewed it out. So if the bottom is chewed out, that means the queen chewed herself out, the bees helped, and she's hatched. So you don't have to find her. A virgin queen that is not mated yet is really small, hard to find. And so you don't have to worry about trying to find her. Not gonna see eggs. From hatch to the first flight is approximately a week. And then she goes on 4 different mating flights, mates with 4 different drones, kind of a hussy. Goes out there, does her thing, comes back, and that's usually another week, that process. If you got good mating weather, if you got bad weather, that can be extended to 2 weeks. They have that window that can be extended out there, even, they say 10, 11, 12 days of that mating flight time can be extended. So after that time, she comes back, takes another week for her to gestate. In other words, get ready to lay eggs. And so you're talking, that's the month. And so you really got to have patience on that. So if you don't have patience, you don't want to do all that, then you find somebody that has a mated queen. And you purchase mated queens, and this is what you do when you're doing a walkaway split. Same thing, except for you still got to find the queen. Still have to find the queen, and you leave the queen behind. Instead of taking the queen, if you have a mated queen, you're going to leave them and or take her, you can do either one, but you need to find her. And so the one that doesn't have a queen, you're going to introduce the queen. Now you need to wait at least 2 days after the split to try to introduce a queen. Anybody know why?
Residual.
So they forget the other queen.
Yes. Queen mandibular pheromone. It takes that long for that to dissipate throughout the colony, and any open larvae also has a lot of strong pheromone, and so they won't even know that they're queenless for a day minimum, usually 2 days. I wait the 2 days. If you wait longer than that, then they start, when they figure out, hey, we are queenless, they'll start drawing out queen cells. So if you waited a week before you had the queen, and then you try to introduce a queen and you wonder why they killed the queen, is because they would prefer their own over anything being introduced. So if you waited too long, and there's a virgin that hatched, and then you're gonna try to put in a mated queen, and there's a virgin that hasn't mated, they're gonna choose their virgin over your mated queen that you're trying to introduce. They'll ball her or kill her every time. So you can't, again, from egg to hatch, 16 days. So after the split, so it's timing, you gotta make sure you have your queen ready to go before you do your split. And then the hard thing is, unless you have a queen bank, you can't hang, it's really hard to hang on to a queen that doesn't have a colony, that's not feeding her. Unless you have a queen bank, just in a box someplace. You're gonna have a day, maybe 2, and then they're dead. I know, okay. So it's all about timing. You know, you got a queen coming on a certain day. Well, you plan 2 days before that queen arrives to do your split. And then it rolls real easy. If you split it and then someone happened that you didn't get your queens, well, then you're gonna have to go through and knock down queen cells. You have to smash those queen cells before they hatch. Because again, if they have a drawn out queen cell, and that thing is just a few days from hatching, that hive will choose their cells over your queen. That's already made it. It's all about genetics, and they're keyed in on their genetics. They're racist, okay? They don't like, if they're carnies, they only want carnolians, And my Italians, they like Italians. If they're Russians, they don't like anybody but Russians, and that's true on the Russians. The Russians it is very difficult to introduce any other kind of bee in the Russian, the Russian variety. It is hard. Because they're so aggressive. Carnies are Carnolians, and the Caucasians are probably the most gentle out there right now. And so you can move with a regular Italian. Golden Italian is a little more gentle, and so you can run back and forth there. Saski's a little more, that we've been running, they're a little more sassy than Saskatraz, but they do well with the mites. And so and we've been thinking about running back to the Golden Italians lately. In fact, I bought 200 queens from Randy Oliver this year, so we could go with the Golden, back to the Golden West there. So breed some gentleness back into because I got a couple guys that want to wear their shorts again. I tell them your legs aren't that good looking, but anyway.
Really? So, one last thing about them flying back, like you said, if you take the queen, that will help hold them. Also, this hive here is facing east. For some reason, the entrance is east, okay? When you make this, if you make the entrance 180 degrees, that will also minimize the drift of the foragers from this hive back to this hive.
That makes sense? So you got different direction, and people will put branches or something to confuse them, try to disorient them.
180 degrees. If it's south, when you take this one, make their entrance north. It doesn't matter which way this one's pointing. Just make sure the one you take is 180 degrees the other way.
In a couple weeks from then, if you want to turn it back, then you can turn it back to wherever you want.
It only takes about 3 days and then you can turn it back out.
And then they'll figure out where their entrance is. I mean, they'll go to the backside and they can't, when someone close the door, they'll hang around that hive until they find it. And as soon as they find it, so the rule is 3 feet or 3 miles. You can move a hive 3 feet and they'll still find their way. And you won't have any issues with flyback, 3 feet. So you move them 10 feet. And then all those, just a single hive. How many tried to do that? You have one hive and you moved it like 20 feet away. And all the foragers, where'd they go? They went back to the original location. And they just piled right there. A lot of times they'll just die right there. They'll make a pile and they'll be there overnight in a couple days. And then because they can't figure out where they went, but 3 feet away they can. So some people, I want to move it over there. Well, they're moving it 3 feet at a time every other day. They finally get them moved.
I just had to move 3 hives that I put on somebody's property, and they were about 15 feet away from where they were describing, and just in the communications, we got it mixed up, and I've got them in 15 feet the wrong way. So if you folks ever seen a robbing screen, it goes over the front and the entrance, and the bees have to come out of the hole, and then they have to crawl up the box, and then there's an opening like up here, okay? And so what I did is I moved them 15 feet, but I turned them 180 degrees. And then I left that robbing screen on there for a couple days because they couldn't come right out there, out of their entrance and fly. They had to stop, wait a minute, something's different. Like you're saying, you can pile branches, there's a lot of things you can do, but a robbing screen I found works really well for getting them to reorient to that new place.
And they probably could even use that robbing screen for a split then.
You can, yeah, because it's got opens and closed strap, little things on the top. I like the plastic ones. They make, ones out of wood with metal screen. They're a little more expensive. The plastic ones are, I think they're called Bee Smart, the ones that I got. I'll get on my phone when I'm over there and I'll get the name of them. But it's the white plastic one, and the whole front of it has got a bunch of holes in it, so they get plenty of ventilation and everything, but they're blocked in.
So any questions on splits so far? Yep.
I got a question about the timing. When is too early and when is it too late
Oh, in the season,
in the season? Right.
the bees will tell you when it's time to split, when they are. When you start to see cell cups or those swarm cells beginning to be made. Okay, don't wait for them to be already drawn out. But you're digging in there and all of a sudden at the bottom of the frame, you're looking and all of a sudden, and it's usually down here at the bottom is where you'll see those cups. Sometimes on the top box, on the bottom frame, in the center, you'll see those cups that are starting to be formed. When you see that, they don't have to be charged. I mean, if they are charged, in other words, there's larvae that's in there and they're already filling it with royal gel, then it's past time, okay? If you have drawn cells, they haven't gone, then yeah, you better do it, but they're gonna do it. Because all they need is a charged cell. That's all they're looking for. As soon as that cell is charged, then they can go. And it also depends on numbers. They're usually not gonna do that until you have 2 boxes and they're full. Okay, if there's a lot of room still, and they've got a lot of people say, well, I'm just gonna throw a super on top and that'll stop the swarming. No, it doesn't. All that is, especially if it's empty frames. You throw an empty frame on top in a box of soup and say, these are full, I need to stop them. They just need more room. I'm gonna throw a super on top and that'll stop them. And they got all kinds of things to do because none of these frames are drawn out. They're all empty frames. They look at that up there and they don't view that as home. They see all those empty frames as that doesn't belong to us. You'll force them to have to start filling that out. If they get it in their head, it's time to go, it's time to swarm. That doesn't stop them on top. Well, we'll slow them down is what we do. We come back and of course, you got 500-600 hives. that are gangbusters. The other 400 are just building, but you got a bunch of them that are ready to go. What we do is what we call a gut super. That is, we take another deep, but drawn comb preferably. If you don't have drawn comb, you can do just blank frames, but then you have to checkerboard. We still checkerboard. So we'll take another box of frames. And what I mean by checkerboard is take one here, I'll take one of these, put nothing on it, put it here. Move a frame, another frame here. So it's checkerboarded back and forth. Drawn comb or comb with brood, comb with honey, and I checkerboard it, and then I don't put it on top, I'll put it in the middle. That is a gut super. You're supering it in the gut. That knocks them back right now. That just stops the world for them right there. Because all of a sudden they put on the brakes. Whoa, first of all, we've got to organize. We got to organize the house. It's all messed up. And we don't know what's going on here. And so that'll buy you a week. Sometimes more. But it'll usually buys you another week. Okay, but if they got it in their head, we're going, and this is really nice because now it's really easy for me to do a split now because I've got, in a week, they're filling out those frames. And I've got a box that I know there's eggs, there's larvae, in both these boxes. And all I have to do is just show up, take that box, and go, especially if I've shaken all the bees down. So before I put this box on top, okay, so I checkerboarded, remember I checkerboarded, so this is checkerboarded. Still got bees in here. So what I'll do is I'll take all the bees off here, I'll shake them, all the bees down, every single one of these frames, shake them off. Why am I shaking? I am making sure the queen is going to be down here in the bottom two boxes. I'll take a queen excluder, put it here. This box goes on top of the queen excluder. Where's my queen? She's down here, she can't get up here. I know that this is ready to go, queenless. This one's queenless, right? So I can take this one, I know the queen's gone. Opposite is the fact also, if I want to take the queen, right? I want to take the queen. I'll shake all the bees down to the bottom box. Okay, so all the bees are down the bottom. I'll put the excluder on the bottom box. I know she's down here. And so when I come, we'll move the top two boxes, queen's down here. The reason why we do that is because we want all the bees to come back up and cover all the frames a day later. They'll even do it overnight. You do this in the evening, in the morning, they've all equalized out. So even though all the bees were down here, I know the queen's down here, I put the excluder on them. The bees now will all filter back up into the top two boxes. And I know she's down here. So we come in the morning, it's a little more work. And we'll move these top two boxes. I know the queen's right here. I take the queen. And then the other two stay. You can do that with, also you can do that if you're just wanting to do, instead of gut super, you want to just do you have two boxes. It's the same principle. You're really hard at finding the queen. I know she's in here, but there is too many bees. There is so many bees. I went through the thing 3 times, every frame, and I can't find the queen. Anybody ever do that? I don't know where she's at. So that's what then you shake them down. And what I do, make it a little bit easier, I'll take an empty frame, because there's a lot of bees, I'll set that empty frame on there so I have a place to shake. I can go down in here, and And there's a lot of different ways to shake bees off of frames. The best way is it's just a quick pop. Like that. You go down and then at the end of that down, you come up. So boom, like that, boom. And that motion right there, boom and up, boom, up. That motion right there, 90% of the bees are falling off. And the only ones that are gonna be left, nurse bees that are hanging on for dear life. And there'd be maybe a dozen or so bees. And then you can look at that real quick, easy to see if the queen's there. So you don't have to get every single bee off of there, just to bet, 90%, boom, boom, and they're all off. I'm looking, I don't see the queen, and so I can put that in the box that I'm leaving. So I got all the bees down here. After I shook this out, same thing, this is empty rim. They're gonna be all over the inside of the rim, and so a lot of people do it straight down like that. Do like that, you're gonna squish all the bees that are on that rim. So if you're gonna try to shake it straight down, you wanna go at an angle like that. Go about 45 up and go like that, and that you'll get most of them going into the box. Straight down, they'll go this side, that side, and very well the queen could be in this rim. So at a little bit of a 45, just like that, couple times, boom. Check the rim, make sure she's not there. Most of the bees will be off of here. Now they're gonna be domed over. And so to put that excluder on top is gonna cause a mess, right? You don't wanna squish any bees. That's where your smoker comes into play. You just smoke them down. You just smoke. You don't have a lot of smoke, just smoke a little bit. They'll go down, smoke a little bit more, they'll go down. They're gonna start coming out the entrance. That's okay. That's all right, because all the workers will, the first ones to come out. 99% of the time, that queen's not coming out the door. So I know she's in here, smoked them down. Then without squishing any bees, you can put your excluder on the rim, and then your box on top of the excluder, all the bees immediately start coming up. In the morning, these are equal amount of numbers. You know where your queen is beyond a doubt. Right? Somebody looking at me like, I don't know, whatever you say. I know she's down here. I just shook them all down there. She's not getting past the excluder. Unless I got somebody's old bent out excluder. But we check our excluders, make sure there's no bends in the wires, and then we know where she's at. And when we want to split, no, we don't have to find the queen. We know where she's at. Take your hive tool and you go in there. A lot of people make this mistake. They just try to pull this off. And most of the time, that excluder comes with the top box. So you got to get your hive tool between the rim and the top of that excluder, that metal, bring it loose a little bit, move this over with all the bees. You can be gentle. They're going to be equal amount of numbers now. And I know where my queen is. So I can take my queen. Can't have her taken. There you go. So that's how commercial guys do it, because we don't have time to monkey around, go frame by frame by frame, hunting down queens. When you're running through 1,000 colonies, it's a lot of shaking. Shake, shake, shake. And it's very effective. But if you want to wade through 40,000 bees, 5,000 bees on a frame, trying to find a queen who's under the pile. She does, and then about the fourth frame in, if you have a massive amount of bees, she's a runner, because you got a lot of chaos going on. There's a lot of commotion, and she's not just going to be hanging out on some frame sunbathing. She's going to be running, and it's going to be hard to find her. So this method, it's probably Like I said, if you got a massive amount of bees and you can't find that queen, that's the way to do it. That's another piece of equipment, good excluder. The queen excluder is a very important piece of equipment. Any questions on all that? Yeah.
Some of the background to metal mesh. What's wrong with the other kind?
Screen?
Yeah.
For the door? It is, when you're able to bend it, it holds form. It doesn't unravel. So you want to accordion it, you know, back and forth, so it looks like an accordion. So when you slide it in there, it expands. And it's tighter. Regular rolled up, it's not as tight and they're gonna get out.
And the nylon and the plastic, they will eat, they'll chomp it out of the way to get out.
Within a little bit.
Yeah.
It
Couple
looks
days.
like about 5 minutes and they're out.
You don't like it?
So that's why. And Lowe's, Home Depot, you buy the little roll of just metal, you get galvanized or just steel or whatever. It's just cheap.
So then my other question is that if you're gonna do a split and you're walking away with one of your boxes, but you're walking away and you left the queen, what's wrong with leaving the queen and taking one that doesn't, if you also have all the other stuff, you have
Eggs.
eggs, you have larvae, you have cat brood, and you have swarm cells. Like I
Yeah.
had like 4 swarm cells on the bottom, is that an issue?
No, that's good. And that, there's nothing wrong with that walk away. Except for, though, if you leave the queen, there's still a possibility for her to swarm.
So let's check it again.
If they're growing swarm cells and again in a week, then they're still thinking about swarm.
Let's hope that doesn't happen. If so, we might be selling this.
Okay. That's all well and good. Anything else there, Trace, before we move on?
Most of us, hobbyists are not gonna shake and do all that. Commercial guys do that because that's the way they do it and it's easier for them. You've got 2 hives, you don't mind going through every one of these. It's kind of why you're doing this, so you can go through and look at everything. And so most hobbyists will find the queen and do it that way. Actually find the queen and put her in the box that's moving, okay? As far as the swarming instinct, like you said, once they've thrown that switch and they've decided we're swarming, there's only one way to make them not swarm. Modifications of it called the Damari method. It's very complex. It's very labor intensive. I wouldn't recommend it. But before that, if you give them more room and you put supers on accordingly, it does lessen the swarm response. If they haven't already decided. If you wait till you got 7 frames covered and you add your second large box, then when both of these have 7 frames covered, you put a super or 2 on it, so they have a lot of room, it will make them less likely to swarm. And that's not gonna completely prevent it, but it's gonna make it a lot less likely. So this time of year especially, if you're thinking, well, we usually say like 7 to 8 frames. This time of year, you can kind of cheat that 7, maybe 6, even real good frames, because you're trying to prevent the swarming, right? Don't do that in the fall. That's a whole different story. But this time of year, you can give them a little bit too much room and it's not gonna hurt them. You know, you don't want to stack 4 supers on a single box or something like that. I mean, you can get outrageous with it, but at the same time, the supers too, in warmer places where I've kept bees, they say, if you feel like you got to put a super on, put 2, just because it gives them that much more room that they won't swarm.
You know, that is drawn comb super.
Right.
2 boxes of blanks is
Not gonna do any good.
anything.
Not gonna do you any good. The other thing, if you have a hard time finding the queen, you can do this. Just go out there, take the top box off and set it over here. Put your queen excluder on, put this one back. Come back 7 days later, and whichever box has eggs in it, that's got your queen, right? So now you only got to go through 10 frames instead of 20 to try to find her. So if you're planning on doing that, it's just an easy way to find your queen. I recommend marking queens. All of my queens are marked. They're just so much easier to find. So much easier to find if you got to find them.
Said the queen excluder is important What do you mean, what makes a good one, and what makes, one?
I use metal excluders
Okay.
instead of plastic.
Okay,
Plastic warps and it, you know, it breaks and a good metal excluder will last as long as you will.
The best queen excluders, if you want to pay for them, they're like 3 times as expensive, is the metal with the wood binding around it. It's got wood around it, kind of looks like this, and the mesh is in the middle. But they're about 3 times as expensive as just the metal one. And so most people don't use that. I just use a straight metal one. I don't even think about a plastic one. They're just junk. They're just junk.
And all B Supply has them, better be Van Lakes, 8 ends.
What kind of dye or?
Okay, the question is, what do we use to mark the bees? There are very specific pens. That it's water-based paint that is used to mark the bee. And you can, again, you buy these at Bee Supply. If you can get those same type of pens locally, do not use oil-based paint. Use the water-based paint.
Most of them say acrylic paint. is what
Yeah,
they-
and that's the type of paint. You know, some people are out there with their own, you know, model tester, you know, paint brush. Use that. The pens are very specific. It's got the retractable tip you push down and it charges it. Paint comes down on the tip and then it's easy to, and there's a lot of different ways to catch the queen. There's queen catchers that you can purchase so you don't have to handle the queen, because a lot of people are anxious about grabbing the queen. They're a lot tougher than you think, although it's very easy to damage them. If a queen has one damaged leg, then it's very difficult for her to lay accurately. The bees will kill her. If she has a mangled wing that is visible, a lot of people, when bees' wings are clipped, it's the second wing on the inside. They don't clip the outside wing, which covers. Because the bees will notice that there's a defect. And when they notice any kind of defect on that queen, they'll kill her. So they're tough, but they're not like bulletproof type of thing. So if you're gonna handle the queen and over time, you'll get used to that. But there are a number of different devices you can use to catch the queen. Okay? And then in that device, immobilizes her where her thorax is visible, and then you can paint the queen and release her. And it's another thing that's it's fun. It's a great exercise. It's, you know, it's enjoyable. My biggest thing there is when you do find her, try not to leave your colony open for some people while they're looking. They're already in it a half hour. You got to remember, the more time that colony is exposed, you have chance of either, if it's too cold, chilling the brood. In any frame of brood that is chilled is dead, or overheating the brood in summertime. And overheated brood, the same thing. You killed that brood because they either cool it or heat it up to keep it at 93 degrees year round. That brood chamber is very temperature regulated, so you got to remember that when you're doing all that it's, when I find the queen, you know, and spend another half hour and you got her marked and everything's great, and you go to release her. So what we do, once you find your queen, you know, you catch her, whether it's a cage or whether it's depends on the device, set her aside, put the hive back together, then go ahead and mark her, and then you can release her after you're done with that. So that is, especially if you're not used to doing this quickly.
I like the one-handed jobs that you don't have to move them after you get her in the tube. If you use the regular catcher, then you gotta move her from there to a marking tube and she can fly away and all kinds of stuff. So what I do is I pull this one out, and this is good. This one's got the queen on it and I want to mark her. She's unmarked. The opposite side, I'll take my bee brush and I'll brush all the bees off. Now, half of these bees start coming around here. I might, even if she's over here, I might sweep some of these bees off so there's less bees. You don't want her in a big crowd of bees when you're trying to catch her. Okay, then I'll put that on there and get her caught up in my catcher. Now, here's the thing, like I said, put this all back together. But what I do before I put this all back together is I put the mark on her. I put the paint on her. Set her out of the sun. Don't put her in direct sunlight. Put her somewhere on the other side of a box or the other side of a cinder block, something where she's shaded while you put this back together. Also, it takes a couple minutes for that paint to dry. And so that helps it dry, because if you put it in there wet, the worker bees will more likely to clean it off. If you leave her out with that paint on her for about 5 minutes and let it off gas, then she's not smelling different and getting attacked, and they're less likely to clean her off. Then what I do is I get this all back together, and then I lay the tube on top and then remove the screen and force her out, and she'll go right. When she gets out here in the light and she sees dark down in that comb, she's diving. She wants to get away. That's the best way to mark a queen.
So next week, we'll bring some queen catchers,
Next week,
next month.
next month, I've got a whole bunch of different kinds.
So we'll,
Whole bunch of
next
different
month.
kinds. I got
one that's kind of third plastic.
Yep,
Yep,
that's but see, when you catch her in that, then you gotta have another piece of equipment called a marking tube, and you gotta move her from one to the other. And I have what's called a muff, which is like a big screen cylinder. You can put your hands in it, and then you can get her in the marking tube without her flying off or dropping off or whatever. Just this year, and I have not used it yet, I have something that looks a lot like the top of a marking tube. But on the back side, there's no tube. There's just 4 spikes that come out. And the idea about that is you get her alone and you just push it into the wax, and you can pin her to the wax, and then you can mark her.
yeah.
And so you don't ever have to pick her up in anything
Don't have to
and
touch her.
worry about.
That's what we started using. Oh. So. What's our,
Where's your phone fight?
yeah, I know.
You're gonna go over a queen right split. That's what you're gonna do next. So we kind of got off on a little bit. of-
Okay, yeah, if you're gonna introduce a queen on a split, same thing, you gotta find the queen. Because you cannot put 2 queens together, you just wasted the purchase of a queen. So you got 2 queen, you buy a queen, again, whatever side's not queen right, that's the one you introduce, and there's a couple ways you wanna do it. That the way you introduce a queen is you're going to put her in the center. You wanna put that queen cage in the center of the colony, closest to the brood, okay? You gotta make sure on that queen cage, if it's a California queen cage, it's wooden box, but one side has screen on it. That screen has got to be facing open area. Do not push that queen cage in where that screen is faced to the comb. They have to be able to access her to feed her. If you push that queen cage in and that screen is facing into the comb, chances are she's not going to make it. So you got to make sure that the screen is faced in the open area, one way or the other, up or down. Place it in here. You get your frames fairly close together. So it just goes, and now also, if it is a place where the comb has been drawn out and there's honey there, and you push that queen cage down in through honey, you can drown her as well. So you need to clear out a spot, make sure there's enough room for her to go down. And actually the 2 wooden parts of the frame is what hold that cage. And you push her down so that cage is flush to the top and she's down inside of the frames. Are you following me? And the candy plug facing down, not up, facing down. It takes them about a day, sometimes less if it's a really full strength hive, for them to eat the candy and to release her. The whole reason behind a candy plug is it gives them time to get used to that queen. The more time they have, the less chance that they're gonna ball her, more greater opportunity for the colony to accept her. That's why the candy plug is there. So, any questions on that? How many have released a queen before? So you kind of understand that. I mean, done it wrong and you wish you would have known, okay? That information would have been nice, a month ago, okay? That's the hard thing is you don't know what to ask when you know, what questions to ask, yeah.
Can I ask, going back to the. But we don't have to worry about that if we have a new right now,
No,
right?
no, if you bought a Nook, there, and it's a 7-10 rule. When they get to that 7th frame of filling it out, it's time to put a box on. Now, if all you have is empty frames, this is a great question. So here's a box, all this has is empty frames, okay? That one's got a little bit of drawn component, all this is just empty frames. So I got a box of empty frames, and my Nook, boy, they're doing good, they're filling out their 710, they got 7 frames filled out. So how, if I just drop this box of empty frames on top, again, they look up, and all that is wood, brand new wood and empty frames. They're not gonna readily want to go up there. They're gonna finish filling out this oftentimes before so you're gonna encourage them to go up. And how you do that is you take a couple of frames from your box of drawn comb. So here's a couple of frames, it's drawn comb. Here's the outside. Don't take, brood frames unless there's, 6 or 7 of these, or that's all they are, brood frames, then you pretty much got to, but they'll take a couple of these drawn comb that have honey and it doesn't have to be capped, it can be open nectar. And take that out of the bottom, go to the center of the top box, okay? I'm gonna go to the center, of the top box. And I'll place it there, middle. I'll take this blank and I'll replace the same slot down below. Okay? I'll take one more from the other side, usually like 1 or 2 frames in. Oh, there's drawn comb. And I'll place it in the top, either next to the one I did, or I'll checkerboard. If it's a really strong hive, I'll go ahead and checkerboard because they'll still be able to cover, and that encourages them to draw out that center one. So in other words, I've got a drawn, a blank, and a drawn. And when I put that together like that, it forces them to draw out that middle one. They don't like to have empty space. Okay? Yep. So just a second, and I'll finish it. And then I'll take this, put it on top. The center frames are above in the center. That's important. If they're on the outside, they always will work on the center moving out. So if you give them drawn frames in the center, they're gonna come up, that's home. They're gonna come up and they'll start working out.
So I'm running 2 deeps and 2 mediums release on my knife. Can't really do that way.
No, it's really hard to do that if you got a medium and a deep or deep and a shallow, what you're doing. Yeah, it's hard to do that.
But what I do, like my split though, got the 2 hives here, and I take the 3 out of one and 3 out of the other one, put them over here, keep the queen over here, and still leave my medium on top. When they're checkable, so they can go up.
Okay,
Is that right?
I don't know, I've never monkeyed with that, but I'm just giving you the background on the double deeps. So that's a normal, configuration double deep, but I know a lot of people run those shallows and but whatever, I'm just giving you the scenario. This will help them immediately. I mean, immediately they're up on it because this was down below. This is part, and it's better not to use capped honey. Capped honey, they don't really move in as much as they do uncapped. And if you are really, really strong hive, you can take a couple of brood frames up there, okay? If it's the couple brood frames up there, and then boom, they're right there, moving it out. I would not move brood frames up there unless you at least have 4 brood frames down below. And then I would only do 1, leave 3, bring up 1. And then try to put a drawn frame of resources next to the brood frame. If you take a brood frame up and all you do is surround it with blanks on each side, there are times that they'll abandon that brood if they're not able to cover it, if they're not able to take care of it climate wise, not able to keep it cold, they're not able to heat it up. They'll abandon that and go back down. And so you're going to take a brood frame up, you need to make sure there's a resource frame that goes up right next to it. Okay. And then you can checkerboard out. That'll bring them up. I'm talking to a lot of new beekeepers that have a lot of new equipment, and I know that you're trying to expand. That's the quickest, easiest way to get them to move up.
Okay. You know, I said they don't like to go up to foundation. But all you have is your first year, and it doesn't have any foundation. So you can't help it. And you can move large frames up into a medium box and do all that, okay? No matter whether you have drawn comb or not in your super, do not put the queen excluder and your super on at the same time. Because bees don't like to go through that excluder if they're looking up and it's not, like you said, they're saying that's not my home up there. And you have an excluder here, more preventing them from going up. They don't want that, and they won't go up. I have had a colony get honey bound, my first colony, because I had two larges full of bees, and I put a queen excluder and 2 supers on it. And I came back in a week and they were still below the queen excluder. They would not come up. What you have to do is leave the queen excluder off and just put your medium undrawn super on here. Give them 3 or 4 days, especially if it's crowded. When all of the forager bees come in and there's not enough room, they have to push up into here. And they may not even see it as their home, but it's just someplace they can hang out because it's too crowded down there. Eventually, they'll start building comb and staying in that super. Once they're starting to build foundation, they're building the foundation, they're building the wax out in that medium super, then you put your queen excluder on and put your medium super back on top. Because now these bees have decided that that medium super is their home because they're building comb there. Okay. So always first thing in the year, do not put just your queen excluder on. Put your first honey super on, wait for them to be up in that medium box, then take it off, put your queen excluder on and put your medium back on top.
We don't use excluders at all in between our brood and our honey supers at all. We have very little problem. Very little problem. A lot of people call them honey excluder, not just a queen excluder, a honey excluder. The bees don't, especially the larger bees. Saskies are a little bit larger than some of the other bees, and those Saskatraz bees have a hard time going through the excluder, especially if their crop is full. And so I've found it will hold back probably 30% of my crop.
I ran queen excluders all the time on every hive I had up until last year. And there's a lot of work and they were all dirty and I hadn't cleaned them over the summer. And I said, well, let me just try. And I put them on there. I had a few that got up in there and laid a little bit, but I use medium for my lower boxes. And I have to clean out those, 100 frames or so a year out of my whole. So those ones that they laid in this year, well, those just become my brood frames for next year. So, some people swear by them, some people don't. I found it's just one less piece of equipment I got to clean and keep up with and buy. But some people swear by it.
Some people swear at them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but that was jumped into that. That was good. See, that wasn't even on the schedule. You're getting free stuff tonight. Huh? Okay, what to do if your hive swarms? Nice knowing you.
Western Colorado Beekeepers is Doug. Please tell me about the swarm.
Yeah, so chances are 2/3 of your colony left. Usually that's how much goes. It's not just half, sometimes it's more than half, 2/3 are gone. So, and I don't, they swarm, and it's pretty easy to know. One day, they are bearded out the front, there are so many bees, they can't even fit in the box. The next day, you open the lid and like, nobody home. So, main thing is, you make sure that what is left has eggs. So the bees that are left can draw out a queen cell. If they don't, then one of your other hives, you borrow resources. So one of your other hives, you'll grab a frame of eggs. Okay, I got a good frame of eggs from another hive, shake off the bees. Don't shake it too hard. Here's the problem, you shake it too hard, the larvae can slide. If it's got a lot of royal gel, if you shake it too hard, all the larvae that's swimming can slide and they'll drown. What happens is that bee, when it is, after it hatches, lays over on one side. They have two portholes to breathe on each side of their head. They will shut one side off. It'll completely seal. And they breathe out of the side that is up. Okay? If they slide upside down, then the side that's open is down, they'll drown because they don't have the ability to open that other side up. Once it's shut and once they're on the side until they turn, instead of doing horizontal, they turn vertical. And when that happens, then it opens up again. So they're important. Don't shake too hard. A bee brush will work. Brush off the bees. Got a frame of eggs. And sometimes you want to grab a frame of capped larvae because this one is depleted and you want to help them out. So you'll drop in a couple of frames and that'll get them going again, and it's not a total loss. Okay, chances are if it's swarmed, you already have swarm cells already going. And so if you already have swarm cells, all is not lost. They're okay. And you just hope for the best. That chances are, if that hive swarmed, by the end of the season, it'll be strong enough to overwinter. But if it's swarmed hard, then you're not going to make a lot of honey off of that particular hive. They don't have the numbers. So that's why it's so important to be paying attention this time of year that your hive does not swarm. Okay. And that's basically all you can do. Now, if the numbers are really down and they're not even filling 5 frames. So you're looking down, what I mean by 5 frames, this is how you count a frame of bees. You pull out that frame and it's bees completely on this side and completely on this side, top to bottom, side to side. They cover, that's 1 frame of bees, okay? Not just one side, both sides is 1 frame of bees. And if you're looking down, top and bottom, and you only have 5 frames, take off 1 box. Don't leave both boxes on them. It's too much room for them to have to maintain. They have to not just guard it, take care of it, heat it, cool it. It's just too much work for them, and it takes away resources of building what is left. So if you only have 5 frames, now if there's still 8 frames left down there, then yeah, leave that second box up because they'll start utilizing it. But if usually a swarm, you're down to 1 box again. So you're down to 1 box, that's fine. Take that box off, let them a month, 2 months later, after a couple of hatches, then they're able. See, they can only hatch and actually produce as many bees as they can cover. And what that means is if it's not just the nurse bees that are feeding, and you have to have that number of nurse bees that feed the larva, but you also have to have enough bees to maintain temperature. So if you have a second box on top, they have to maintain all that temperature, the whole entire, because we still are getting down pretty cool in the evenings. Then what happens is they'll shrink their nest. They'll abandon a couple of frames of brood, and the queen, even though she's laying, they won't feed the hatched larvae. They'll pick it. Actually, they'll consume it. And they won't, because they don't have enough room to cover it. So yeah, they're gonna need it eventually, but let them grow into it. So you have to, if they swarmed, you know, I mean, it's heartbreaking because you worked so hard, you got them overwintered, they were looking real good, and then the knuckleheads left you. It's kind of like a soap opera, okay? You write a book. And it's not over, it's not done. Just make sure they have resources. And that's why we always encourage, if you have another hive, you can take resources off of one and give it to the other and build them up. Okay, any other questions along those lines? That was an easy one. Anybody have, yeah,
You mentioned queen right splits, just to backtrack a little bit. Which one of the splits was that?
that's queen right. Queen right means the one that has a queen. That's what that term is, queen right. So there's a queen in the hive.
So queen right split is when you split without taking the queen. So
Okay,
kind of like the
okay,
you're talking about?
what we're talking about is you're gonna buy a queen.
Oh, okay.
You're gonna buy a queen, and the one that doesn't have a queen, you're gonna introduce that queen, and that's why we went over how to introduce that queen. So that's what that's about.
A queen right split is the name of the split where you take 5 of these frames and you make a nuke somewhere else to keep this one, because this one's growing too big. So you in essence make your own nuke somewhere else, okay? That is what, that's name of that split is a queen right split.
Right,
Yeah, what he said,
okay,
and your glasses.
yeah, glowing, growing your hive is what we said we want to talk about, growing your hive, okay. When that particular, once to get going this time of year, it's pretty easy because you have a lot of resources. What's happening right now? What's going on? What's the main resource, nectar flow in the valley right now? Anybody know? It started about 3 days ago. Big time, boom, throughout the valley. Some people hate it, beekeepers love it. Russian olive, big time. How many of you that it messes with your sinuses, that Russian olive is just a pain? But you gotta love it because it helps your bees tremendously. It just makes. And if you wanted to run for Russian olive honey, you could do it, you know, make a box of Russian olive honey. Tastes okay, you know, you'd be surprised. And it doesn't smell bad at all. But it's not dark, it's a little light. It's reminiscent of the taste of rabbit bush without the smell. Okay, so that's going on right now. We have a lot of resources coming in. Hay is starting. Woohoo! There's some, the big guys, the big boys, they got their hay looking pretty good. Just a couple of, who's out towards Fruita on the other side between here and Fruita, anybody? On the other side of Fruita, between Fruita and Loma, anybody there? Okay, that's going good there too. Who's on Loma and Mac? Mac is just having a struggle there. Mac is not really, but Loma, this side between Loma and Fruita, our yard there is looking pretty good. It's always, you know, spring kind of starts at Palisade and goes that way towards Utah. Anyway, that way, well, I don't know where. That way is where I live, and spring doesn't happen there till June, so. And the way somebody keeps asking me, I keep getting this question off, should I feed my bees? Should I feed my bees? The bees will tell you if they need something. There's a couple of dearths, and that means the seasons are the times of year that we have very little nectar or pollen coming in. Usually we always have pollen year round. Nectar, yeah, the nectar flow is at times off and on. We were in a tremendous nectar flow before that last cold snap. There was every single one of my yards was heavy. That cold snap hit, man, they went through their stores like nobody's business. Because the cold shuts off nectar. You'll still have pollen, It's just like a switch, a light switch, boom. Especially trees. Trees, any flowering trees, cold just cuts it down. Not so much in the ground level, ground cover, small stuff usually is able to bounce back. But lately it's coming in again. It's pretty exciting when you're looking at net and you want to know is the nectar coming in right now? Or is this something that has been in the past? What you do is you take a frame that you can look in there and it's shiny nectar. You can see that, and it's not capped yet. But how to tell if it's today or yesterday's nectar, or if it's a week old, is you just turn that frame this way and do it over the hive, because you don't want to waste it, and shake it like that, just bounce like that. And if that nectar comes out of the comb and the top of all the frames is instantly wet, that's fresh nectar. That's nectar from today or yesterday. 3-day-old, they've already started dehydrating it, so it doesn't come out as easy. So that's why you tell, if you're in what we call a drowner, if it's just piling in, well, all the frames are wet, and so the Russian olive is happening, and we've had a lot of wet frames today. 2 days ago, the wind kind of messed it up, and then hopefully it doesn't get too cold tonight. Then I think the forecast doesn't get real cold, but so anyway, what else was there? One more thing that we're gonna talk about. Mite control.
Just talking about nectar flows, when are the dearths in this region?
Okay, the main dearth happens in August, early August. That's when it kind of hits the valley and be right before the rabbit bush. So the end of the summer forage kind of slows down. That's the one in the valley that really shuts everything down. Okay, it's different in every area. And I don't know, Delta might, and where
It's
you're at.
middle
might
of
be different.
September where we're at.
Okay.
Rabbit bush starts.
Yeah, so our rabbit bush starts, there in the end of August, and depends on where you're at in the valley. Some before the others. Anyway. And then there's a little bit of there's a week or two in July at times. I've seen one right after the 4th, that second week. Sometimes that's when that hits. So when you're in a dearth, you can supplemental feed. We always feed during the summer, 1-to-1, 1 part sugar, 1 part water if you need to feed. You kind of be careful with your feeding, because you don't want to adulterate your honey. And it'll do it. And they'll put that sugar water right up in the honey, and so you don't really have the pure honey. So we do not feed. I only feed in the winter. The only time I feed is January. And that's it. I don't usually when I do splits, I don't take too many resources from the beehive to where they have to they're foraging real hard. So
If you're making a nuke or you're making a split, you can feed it. One of the very few things in beekeeping that's 100%, everything is 99%, but the bees do dumb things sometimes, is you never ever have honey supers and feeders on at the same time. If there's getting into a dearth, pull your supers off and put a feeder on, okay? You should always feed a split or a nuke, and you keep feeding them until they won't take it.
they'll tell you.
And because they'll just all of a sudden you'll keep filling it, and then you go out there and it won't have gone down like 2 or 3 times. It's like, well, they're done, because their natural instinct is to go get the nectar. When they're not doing that, or they're hungry, they'll come up and get your sugar water. But then once they can go out and get that nectar, that's their instinct. And so they'll go do that and they'll leave your
They,
sugar water.
they prefer the nectar over sugar water. Yep. Yeah, that's very similar to a nook. You can.
Yeah, they have 0 resources when you catch them and put them in a box.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't like to take your sugar water, because as soon as they hit the box, they're going and looking for nectar. So,
And a swarm is the the best beehive to draw comb, I found. There's just something about a swarm, they're real good at drawing frames. So if you got a swarm this year, you got some empty frames, put them to work, because they'll start drawing comb out. And you think about a swarm, they're looking for an empty, hollowed out tree, somebody's attic or whatever. And there's no comb there, and so they're really good at, for some reason, that, and we've been trying to figure out how to flip that switch, because everybody needs to draw comb, but swarm draws comb.
The queen can't even start laying until they draw comb. So that puts, you know, that swarm is not gonna have any new bees for 21 days. That's the cycle of a worker bee. But now they're not gonna have it for 21 days, plus however long it takes them to draw out enough comb for her to start laying. So they get right on that.
Mite control. If you, right now, it's time to start understanding your mite load is, and what we are finding, one of the main reasons behind the colony collapse this past year, where so many colonies died, and not just the commercial. The numbers are coming in from the backyard beekeepers that it's near 50% loss nationwide. And it comes down to mite load. Mite load equals virus load. And we didn't have all that to worry about. Scott Debman, entomologist out of University of Montana, and another entomologist out of California are collaborating, because there is no processes to find and evaluate new viruses. And that was the problem. We knew there was something different. This was different than ever before. What's killing the bees? So we thought, well, was it issues with mite load? And part of it was, with the commercial side of the industry, honey prices tanked. Honey prices dropped below $2 a pound for a commercial, for selling bulk. And so a lot of guys held on to their honey or didn't pull their supers. And we know, and a lot of the commercial industry still uses Amitraz. And you can't put Amitraz on if you have honey supers. That's one of the things that is tested for. They test when you send your honey in to a packer, they test for chemicals. And if it's elevated levels, they reject your honey, they reject the load. And so they're really stringent about, especially Amitraz, that's the big one. That's Apivar for you guys. Apivar is the one treatment that you use. And so what happened was there was a perfect storm. Weather conditions were terrible in the fall, and they didn't pull honey because the honey prices tanked, and they didn't have money because they waited to sell their honey for their fall treatments. And so they waited another month. Usually we're treating in August. Most of them treat in August. As soon as they pull the honey, they treat. They waited till September. And in just that 1 month, mite load exponentially increased very significantly. Mite load equals virus load. And on top of all that, we found a new virus. Yay! And for short, they're calling the iridescent virus. And it is propagated, and it is how it's moved throughout colonies, or how it is shared, is through wax moth. So they're finding that if there's wax moth and then there's an elevated, and so this brand new, this was just last month's issue in the Bee Journal. So this is breaking technology. Here's the problem. Nobody has ever been set up to test for new viruses, because there's no protocols to test for new viruses. What we do is we test we take a bee that is sick, we mash it up, and we test for the proteins of the known viruses. And so we weren't looking for a new virus until somebody said, well, It's not nosema, so it's not a fungi, and it's not a deformed wing virus, it's not Israeli acute, it's not cashmere, it's not any of the 3 bee paralysis viruses that we are looking for. It was none of those, but there's something wrong. And so there's very little equipment in the United States that tests for viruses in the bees. There's a bunch for bovine, and a lot of the other agriculture or the other, and the other, livestock industry, but very little when it comes to, in fact, they're looking for, a couple of labs are looking for donations so they can gear up their equipment to test for new viruses, because that's something that hasn't been done. Anyway, all that to say, they found a new virus that is prevalent, and, what we need to do is be very diligent in our mite control. Yeah,
I don't know if you all use the Mite Check app around here, but if you wanna download that Mite Check, every time you do a wash, you submit your number, you know, they put it on a map, you can see where other counties across the US are doing
okay,
anything.
it's called Mite Check.
Yeah, I've been doing it for years, it's really interesting to see where the hot spots are.
Right,
People,
Is there a
where
hot
the
spot
neighbors
here?
are. I haven't done it yet this.
Okay, I'm gonna say. Find out where the hot spot, I'm gonna avoid it.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
So, with the new, how soon should one do?
Well, to do a mite wash, it's kind of, a nook, because you had so few numbers, but you don't necessarily need to do a mite wash. Check your mite load to actually treat for mites, especially if you're going to use oxalic acid. Oxalic acid is the one mite treatment that can be used with honey supers. And it is FDA approved now for all beekeepers. Oxalic acid in any form. And any way you want to throw at it, they're no longer requiring a license.
With the strip too?
Strips,
Yeah.
the vapor or the liquid, all of that you can use it. Now, we use the 2 oxalic acid method deliveries that I've used and I lost less than 20% this year. I think our numbers, my numbers are around 14% is all the loss that I had. Which is phenomenal, and that's because I don't just tell you what you need to do, I do it. And very successful at keeping the mite load down. In the spring, when they're close to broodless, I hit them with vapor. Again, the mite, varroa mite, that's the only thing about oxalic acid. Oxalic acid does not penetrate the capped brood, and that is where, at any one particular time, the vast majority of mites is behind the encapsulated cell. One mite goes in on a worker cell. How many come out? On drone?
6,
8.
8.
So if you got a lot of drone tone right now, and you do, because that's swarm season, there's a lot of drones out there, that your mite load can go from a 3 and a 4 from 1 month to the next month. You're throwing 14s and 15s, even 20. Just instantly, boom, if you're not doing something, and you got to keep them in check. So oxalic acid, the extended sponges during this time of year is a great way to go. Again, if you want to use formic is getting a little warm to be using formic right now. I would steer you away from formic. There's a number of different, and they're all of them just, and I don't want to go through all the different miticides. If you want to stay with your natural miticides, thymol products are good. Anyway, Hopguard 3 now is showing a little bit of and that's a natural miticide. But now they're on the third variety or the third rendition of it, and I don't know. I haven't heard a lot of great, exciting positives about that, but a quick kill all across the board, and that's the sponges isn't like right now and all the mites are dead. That's why we call it extended, because that sponge will last 90 days or better. And so what happens is that it exposes the bees and the mites over an extended period of time and keeps that mite load down. Okay, so if you don't know what your mite load is, those of you that are running, just had nooks, you can, just throw those strips on top of the frames. How they, again, I get this question and I almost every time we talk about that, where do they go? Okay, so this is your double D, boom, boom. Those strips between the bottom and the top box of the brood chambers, not the supers, the two brood chambers, they go where? Right here, between them. And they go on top of the brood chamber, keep them in the center. Don't put them with the frames, perpendicular to the frames, and it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4 in the middle above the brood chamber. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, right there in the middle. That's where it extended, if you're doing extended sponges. And some of you picked them up for me, yep. Still do the same, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 frames right in the middle, boom, 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 right there in the middle. About an inch apart. And those strips are, you cut that pad, you cut that Swedish sponge into 4 strips. They're usually about 1 inch and 3/4 a piece is what they come out to be if you're buying the wet techs. And so cut them into 4s. What was the formula if you're just doing like a couple hives?
1 cup of glycerin, 1 cup of oxalic acid will do 10 strips, probably 8, 9 right in that area.
That's enough to do two colonies because there's 4 strips per.
But no, it's 9 full, that'll do like 9 hives.
Oh, that'll do 9,
Yeah.
one cup and 1 cup?
Yeah, 1 cup and 1 cup.
It'll do 10 full sponges.
Yeah, when I did intended something, then it seemed like it was maybe a little bit shy, so that's why I kind of cut back on it a little.
Yeah, you want to make sure they're saturated. I mean, really saturated.
If they're dripping, there's too much, but you want to get them as juicy as you can. The other thing is, I don't know if anybody in here runs 3 mediums like I do. We have a couple people in Delta that do. And so that kind of, where do you put the pads? Wherever the brood is. If you have 3 mediums for your brood chambers and the brood is in the first and the second box, that's where you put it, is between those 2 boxes. If your brood is in the second and third box, then you put it between the second and third box. It's the same idea. You're cutting the brood ball in half with those sponges. It's wherever the brood is where you want it.
And they're gonna propolize around them and they're gonna try to chew them out. And some hygienic colonies will chew them out. If you use wet tex sponges, they won't disintegrate. Some of the cheaper sponges out there, they're cheaper, but they'll basically just disintegrate. They'll just crumble. First time that you do a hive inspection, they just fall apart. The wet techs, they'll last, like I said, 3 months. And so the longer you can get them to last, the efficacy stays congruent. So that's, you want to make sure that you, again, put them in the middle, keep them above the brood chamber. That's where the mite load is. That's where the mites are. And run them back and forth. How it works, many people say, well, how actually does it work? It doesn't kill the mite because of some kind of chemical reaction like a synthetic miticide such as flavonate or Amitrax. How it works is that under a microscope, you can look at the actual oxalic acid and it looks like shards of glass, like literally just shards of razor blades. And what the consensus is right now in the scientific community is that it eviscerates the podium. In other words, it slices their feet. They have suction cups on their feet that they call them podium. And what that is used is to gain leverage on the bee itself. So they drive their beak, if a boss side, it's like a big hook beak that drives right into the fat body of the bee. They're gonna feed on their internal organs. And I like to kill every mite that I, anyway, so it eviscerates the podium and they cannot find or gain leverage and they just die of attrition. That is the scientific consensus right now. I don't know if it's hard on their intestines and I don't know. I don't know that there's been a lot of scientific bantering on how it works and what people think, but all we know is it works. It works. And it's very, it doesn't have a great effect negatively on the honeybee. Every miticide affects the honeybee, but that's probably the one that is the
The
least,
least, yeah.
the least invasive.
And it's probably least invasive because it's not a poison. All of the other ones in one way or another are a poison. And so you want to have a poison in the right dose so that it affects that itty bitty little mite, but not enough to affect the bee. So you got kind of a balance there. Whereas this really doesn't affect the honeybees, and yet they don't build up a resistance to it like they would any kind of a insecticide.
So that's why I like the Amitraz, or I like the oxalic acid over Amitraz because of that
Mhm.
reason right there. All miticides that are synthetic or poison build up in the comb. Will build up in the comb over time. As does pesticides, herbicides, fungicides. So miticides do too. I'm gonna pass around a couple of frames that I called out. That, I mean, that's fairly new. That's like a frame that's probably less than three years old, but it's got problems. So, and I'm gonna pass it around and whether you can see the problem or not. There is some issues on each one of these, and I called them all out. Look, I work with some guys that say, you're an idiot. Why would you ever throw that away? And I said, well, what was your percentage of loss last year? And then the conversation is over. Because the same guy that was telling me I'm an idiot lost 80% of his outfit. Here's another one. I called that one there too. Going to the landfill.
Just spoke with a commercial beekeeper a couple of weeks ago. Told him I was replacing all of my comb every 5 years, which is what the industry standard was. And he just told me I was throwing away money. But he had 70% losses and I had 11% losses over there. So is that the reason? I would probably think it has something to do with that.
So what you're looking for, is there any cells that are propolized over? You're looking at that. A lot of you say, I don't see the problem with that. Is there any cells that the bees, they're plugging with propolis? Bees will tell you that there's something wrong with that frame. The bees are talking to you. You listen to them. So if they're propolizing it, they're capping it. The reason why they're capping it, because it is poison. It's something that they know is an issue. And most of those are probably a pollen issue. So they pulled some pollen from a tree or a plant that was sprayed. And some of you say, well, I don't have to worry about it because I don't go to California. I have more problems getting sprayed in the Grand Valley than I ever have in California, by far. I get hammered in the valley.
That's because California, the government is so big and they're all up in everybody's business. You know,
Well, number one, farmers cannot spray in California in the month of March. It's illegal for them to spray anything the whole month of March because of the pollination. So there's a spray rig that fires up in March, it's a $250,000 fine. So that's basically because of the pollination event. Did you know that 87% of every beehive in the United States is in California during March? Pretty impressive.
2 to 2.5 million colonies is what I've read.
Yep.
And 80 billion bees.
All sharing mites.
Well, they're not all together. I basically cover an area that's all mine. They're just all me.
The drones aren't still gonna.
Well, I don't mate in California. I don't get,
It's too cold.
my bees do not mate in California.
There's just no drone.
Well, I mean, I would imagine around the edges where somebody else, might have some, you might have a little bit of overlap, but not a lot.
But everybody that we work with, everybody that surrounds me for miles, I know, I work with them. I know their outfit, I know their bees, I know their practices, same way. And we've been doing the same, we're in the same area, been there. The guys I work with, they've been there the 5th generation now. So it's not, this whole idea where we're going and we're sharing all the problems and bringing all the problems back, that's propaganda, that's fake news. Take it from somebody that's been there, that's working it, so that doesn't happen. I mean, because we all go to the same areas, that we have contracts with the same farmers and have the same, we work with 2 outfits, one Winters Farm and then Van Ruler. So those two farmers, been with them for years. Good. Now you're looking at those frames. Do you see what I pointed out? Did you see the cells that are propolized? That are covered over? A lot of people would look at those and say, there's nothing wrong with that. A little closer. Listen to what the bees are telling you. And they're showing you. There's not a lot. There's just a couple on a couple of those frames. That's enough for me to kill it. I'll just cut them out. I just won't. It's not enough for me to hang on to that and take the chance, because they're telling me there's poison in that frame. Might be just a little bit, but like I said, I'd rather pay for a brand new frame than a whole colony of bees. Is it the main thing? It's not the main issue, but it's one of them added to the virus load, added to the stressors, whether it's a dearth, whether it's poor nutrition. It's one thing added to the mix. That's something I can do literally to take away from the stress. That makes sense? So that's, and they're really good looking frames. A lot of people say, I'll give them to me. No, I'm not gonna give that to you either. Okay, any questions on mite control? We've been talking about all kinds of mite control. So if you have a full strength hive, I would do a mite wash. I would see what your mite load is. We've been doing a lot of mite washes because last month we were trying to find a breeder. So out of the outfit, we narrowed it down to 15 different colonies that I thought was going to be a breeder. And that means the best of the best of the best. And that means number 1, no mites. Boom, they're throwing zeros. We have full strength colony. In other words, 3 boxes high, the full top to bottom bees, and frame to frame to frame, 15 frames of brood in these monsters. She's a monster. And 0 mites. That's impressive.
There's no mean girls.
That's impressive. Now, first thing is 0 mites. I also like gentlemen's, because working with mean bees is no fun. Early buildup, they got the numbers, so that check, already got the numbers. Honey production, are they bringing in honey? Are they bringing in pollen? They're bringing in resources. What type of resources? How's it look for? Is that queen, is the genetics when they're drawing out a comb, are they wonky comb? In other words, is the comb drawn out perfectly? And what's the brood pattern? Is the brood pattern wall to wall? Is it just over here on one side and the other side is is pollen and honey, and they're only doing brood on one half. I do not like that, Sam, I am. I want wall-to-wall brood, a nice, beautiful brood pattern, little bit of honey, little bit of pollen. Is the pollen frames, do they have, is she bringing in pollen? Now, she doesn't do it, but her genetics do. So when I say she, that's all her genetics. Everything that happens in that hive is from her genetics. Everything, yeah.
So why are they, I have one frame where it's on an outside frame, they're building wonky comb. Why are they doing that?
I don't know.
Come on.
They're retarded.
Help me.
Okay, so if you got two blanks and you put two blanks together, especially if they're blanks that don't have, see, that one's got some good little bit of drawn comb. So they get two blanks. And if they don't have much wax on them at all, you have these two blanks together. How, if you ever watched a video on how they actually draw comb, they hang together. They'll hook themselves together. And especially out in the wild, they'll hook themselves together in a chain. And that's how they begin to draw it out. So if the bee space is great between those because there's too much room. So a lot of times what they'll do is they'll draw it crosswise because they're hanging instead of because there's too much bee space. That's why if you want to use a drawn comb and put a blank next to it and checkerboard, drawn comb blank, drawn when you're drawn comb from now on. Try not to put two blanks together and try to make sure that your blanks have wax on them.
So what do I do? I want the comb.
Scrape it off, scrape it right down to and make them start it over. And then shake your finger at them. So you do it again, out you go, okay? Tell that queen, one more chance, okay? Yeah.
Same situation, but it's between two fully drawn frames, and they decided to build like perpendicular comb and then a bunch of drone comb. Then I took it out and then they put it back.
Okay, so that's why you scrape it all the way down if you can.
Yeah.
And then move it.
Oh.
Move it. So it makes them, they don't have that chance to do that again because move it next to something that's drawn out, so they don't have space to do that. If they have that space, they're gonna do that, but you move it, and so it's next to drawn out comb.
Yeah, it was between two fully
Yeah,
drawn comb.
yeah, and that's genetics. So wonkiness is part of the deal. And so if you got a wonky queen,
It was a swarm, yeah.
okay, so you never know, that's probably why this.
See, also a swarm like that, if you put a swarm on all drawn comb, they're wanting to make wax and put it somewhere. So that you start getting a lot of burr comb, they start doing weird things. Drop a few undrawn ones in there and they're happy.
50-50.
Yeah.
Yep, checkerboard, boom, 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 boom. Try not to checkerboard brood frames though. That's really hard on them. In the summertime, lots of nectar coming in, you can get away with it, but you can ruin a hive by checkerboarding the brood chamber. You gotta know what you're doing there. And I don't do, but if I do checkerboard, I'll only throw one right in the middle. And not boom, boom, boom. I'll just separate that brood chamber, throw a blank right down in the middle. So they hate having nothing on side of the brood. And they'll draw that out in a day, boom. Full strength hive will draw that comb out in a day. The only reason I do that, if I'm looking for a frame to graft from. And I need a new frame, so I'm grafting. So I'll use that to draw out a frame in a hurry.
The golden rule with checkerboarding brood, if you're going to do it, is never leave one frame by itself. You can do two frames of brood and then slide one in there, and then two frames of brood and then slide one in there, but don't ever leave one frame by itself.
One frame of brood by itself.
Exactly. I don't ever checkerboard the brood chamber, but the frame right on the outside of the brood is where I put my frames that I want them to draw. Because like you said, on this side of this frame, there's brood. And then you have this one is not drawn, they don't like that, and they'll start drawing that out real quick.
Anyway. Any more questions on mites, miticide? The left side, right side?
Don't you have to warm that up and mix the gel and the oxalic?
Yes.
Yeah,
Keep it under 160 degrees, 170, there's a chemical reaction. Little mushroom cloud at your house, you know what happened.
I like to heat my glycerin up to 130 to begin with, before I put the oxalic acid in. And then I stir the oxalic acid in, and that kind of keeps it, because the temperature's coming up and up and up. When it hits 130, if you put room temperature material in it, cools it back
Knocks it
down. And then you just stir it, keep stirring it until it clears back up. Once it clears back up and it looks just like vegetable glycerin, then you're done, you can turn it off.
yeah, I set mine in a big pot in water and then put the finger inside. Yeah,
You're using water?
No, it's like a double boiler, like you melt wax.
Oh, yeah.
You could do that, I don't do that, but some people, you know, I can see where, if you're really worried about it, you could do that.
And when you're doing this, make sure you use your wife's best pot.
No, I got.
And utensils, you know, the ones that she. And then you're gonna sleep in the area. The bees, because you're not supposed to do that. No, in other words, whatever you're using to make oxalic acid, that's what it's gonna be for the rest of its life, because it'll ruin it. For anything else, it'll taint it, it'll tarnish it, but you go to Walmart and buy that,
Garage sales,
yeah.
estate sales.
Yep, that's the way to do it. So good. Did we learn anything? Okay, just always challenge you. Okay, and you need any other instruction and direction? We were talking about, from time to time doing mentorship. If you are an experienced beekeeper, in other words, you've overwintered at least 2 years, that's what we kind of like, and you have some time, we'd love to utilize your wisdom. And even if you don't have a lot of time, a little bit of time would be wonderful to help some of our new beekeepers. Just have that connection. And it's not like you have to go to their apiary. A lot of things can be answered just by sending a picture. They send you a picture and you're able to say, well, this is what it is, because you've had that experience, and love to utilize your wisdom and knowledge. If you'd like to be part of our mentorship, come talk to Doug and we'll get you rolling there, get you on the list. And if you would like a mentor, anybody would like a mentor? Okay, there you go. We have folks that would like a little bit of instruction. There you go. Any other questions? Yep.
Are you having your question answered in 2 weeks?
Or Q&A?
Yeah, Q&As in 2 weeks. I was gonna bring that up. So we got a little overwhelmed tonight and you get some other questions popped up. So, our in-person meeting is always the second Wednesday. The Q&A is always the fourth Wednesday. And that's the, full Zoom. So
Who in here has raw honey for sale? In town in Grand Junction. Speak to that gentleman back there with the beard in the corner. He would like to buy some.
How much you need? Huh?
Just small.
A
A quart,
gallon?
a pint, a quart, a
1
pint.
gallon? Okay, I got
Or less.
55. The last year this year, the honey's coming pretty quick. And that's exciting. Also, I think next month we'll also talk about maybe some, get ahead of on the extraction and some of the extraction equipment and what to start doing to get ready for honey harvest and what you can do to boost that harvest. And what's your honey bound? Well, we need to talk to you about right now about honey bound. Go ahead.
Got honey bound?
Being honey bound, what to watch for, what not to do.
Okay. The word honey bound means that this colony is bringing in so much honey and they've filled up all of these 2 boxes and the queen is not having enough places to lay.
And the reason why
why.
Why she doesn't have any place to,
To lay is because they filled it all up with honey. And so she can't, there's no place in there to lay. If you find yourself in that position, a good way to tell if you're doing that is you pull out a frame and you have brood on there, closed brood, and in between you have honey. In between your brood, they're starting to put patches of honey.
when that cell hatched. She didn't lay an egg, they put honey
Put
in.
honey in, okay? So if that happens, if you're not severely honey bound, you can just put supers on top and they'll move it, okay? They'll give her room. They don't want to put the honey down there. They don't have any other place, okay? If it is very severe and she doesn't have a place to lay, what'll happen is they'll keep filling in and she has less and less places and then there won't be any babies. If you don't have any baby bees coming out, in about 6 weeks, you won't have a hive because there's no new ones being born. So what you want to do is take some of these frames out that are solid honey and spin them out in an extractor and extract the honey out of them and put them back in, okay? If you have other frames that aren't in this hive, you've got another box in your garage and you have some drawn comb in there. Take out
Drawn comb, not
drawn
blanks.
comb. Take out some of the honey, if you have 4 or 5 frames that are drawn, take 4 frames out and put those 4 frames in here. So that then she has a place to lay.
One way to replace them in the same spot or just
I would put them right in the middle,
in the middle, okay?
because now she has that's where she wants to lay. That's what she wants to lay, right in the
So,
middle.
so blank, so
Right,
if you've extracted that one you just extracted, that's when it'd be really good to put, because it's a wet frame.
Right,
And they'll clean that one up and utilize that a lot quicker than an old dried out hole.
and what you can do is take, let's see, if you're severely honey bound, you can take 3 or 4 of these out. Put your 3 or 4 drawn comb in here, go spin these out, and then come back and switch them out for more.
Yeah.
And get to relieve them from laying everything back into those frames, make sure you have plenty of supers. Because once you relieve this down here, she's gonna start laying and all that, and they're gonna start doing what they should be, which is putting it up top.
You know,
do you want do you want, is that when you would want to use your queen excluder?
no,
No, you wouldn't need to use your queen excluder. Usually they put honey in the top and they work their way down. Usually, okay? And a queen doesn't like to go over honey to then start laying. So that's what happens is that honey cap starts coming down and down and down. And she's in the bottom box, and then this whole box is full. And then they start putting it down here, and then pretty soon she doesn't have any place to lay. So a lot of times, if you're honey bound, you'll find the top box completely full. And the bottom box is starting to become full. So you can take this whole box, if you have an extractor set up, shake the bees out of it, take it for an hour and go extract it and put it back on. You don't have the equipment.
yeah, and that alleviates that's a honey bound situation. That's something that if it gets away from you, because we're busy, you got stuff going on in summer, and you come back and, oh man, it's all messed up. Well, then you have to spend a little bit of time. It's like you're saying, a honey bound hive is a dead hive. It's dead bees flying.
It just doesn't know it yet.
Soon as their life cycle is over, what is the life expectancy of a bee? Around 2 months. So in 2 months without new bees, at the most, so all the workforce is gonna be done in 2-3 weeks. And then right behind them is the nurse bees, no nurse bees coming up. So it's, all of a sudden you go from all these big numbers to,
And it'll go quick. You take a drawn comb out to spin it out, and you put this in there, you didn't do anything to give them more room. Because a queen can't lay on this. So you didn't help the problem at all. So make sure, put drawn comb back in. If you don't have any drawn comb, take 3 frames out, shake the bees off, take them in the house and spin them out and bring them right back out and put them on in here. And do that you can do that a couple times. But you have to do it urgently, you have to do it now if you have a honey bound hive. Or you won't have a hive.
I have a question. If I'm running that would, didn't have a whole lot to spin, but I just took the hive tool and they were capped. You know, and I just decapped it, let the honey kind of run out. thinking that they would clean it up. But I'm not sure that was right or not to do that.
I don't know that it's gonna help you because they're gonna look for another place to put it. So once they get it cleaned out, where are they gonna put it?
Same place.
They're gonna put it right back in the same split place because they don't have any other place to put it. Now, if you was to
Well,
scrape,
no, he said later on, that was like the next season, that they've got room there, but I just wanted to.
oh, not for queen, not for being honeybound, you're talking about.
Right.
You have an old frame that's been sitting there for, if it's not crystallized, you can do that. If it's crystallized in the comb, they're not
This,
gonna touch
the
it.
best way for them to take the honey out is not in the hive, not uncap it and put it back in the hive. That makes a mess. Basically, outside the hive, you got a whole box of frames you want them to just take the honey out of, set it on its side like that, just like this. Yeah. Like that. See all of them falls together, then it's on its end. And they can access it from both sides. I would, at night, take it back in the garage, so the mice and whatever the outside night critters don't get at it. During the day, set it on top of a table or something elevated, so, and they will, as soon as they find it, they'll clean it up. They'll rob it out. We call that robbing it out. And that works for crystallized honey too. That's the only way you're gonna get crystallized honey out of the frame, is let them rob it out. And they'll never rob it out inside like that.
Yeah, but they wouldn't take it, no. But you,
They'll rob it if it's not, if it's in their hive, that's part of our stores. They think that's our reserve, that's our bank. We're only gonna mess with that if we have to. If it's outside the frame, outside their hive, it's fair game. It's like Donkey Kong, it's on, and they're gonna go at it. So that's the difference in the dynamic. Anything inside, it's theirs, outside, free game. So that's why you need wet. Yeah, if you don't have a real good extractor and your honey was cold when you extracted it, so you have a bunch of honey left in the frames. And that's another way, before you put that super up to store it, leave it outside like that and they'll rob it out.
How far away from the other?
Don't matter.
How far away doesn't matter, but there's a reason why I put it on its end. Put it like this, they're still gonna rob it out. But then what happens when you're inspecting this hive next time and you have this off? Oh, there's that place I went to get honey, and now you start robbing yours. Anytime you open a hive to inspect it, it looks like that. And those bees that rob this out, they go, I can rob this out now.
You're training them.
So you're training them to rob, to fight. Whereas if you put it like this, it's different, and they don't look at it the same.
And they can access it from both sides. That's why we do it this way. They'll rob it out quicker if it's up on its end like this, because they can access it both sides.
Don't be surprised if you see a lot of wax laying all over the place, because they will tear it up a little bit.
Yeah, they do, but it's not as bad as, if you don't have, and that's another, if you don't have an extractor, some do a crush method, and they're just scraping the frames all the way down to because they don't have any kind of mechanical extractor. That honeybound is not gonna help you by scraping the frames. It's gonna be the same as a blank, so if you don't have an extractor, I think Doug has one you can rent.
Well, not right, it's a club one.
Well, it's a club
Sign
one,
up
okay.
for it.
You'd have- It's a crank, that's the crank.
It's the crank, yeah, I have two crank ones, although one of them has got a broken top, I gotta get
So
it
if
replaced.
you're really good at this, or you have a grandkid, and your grandson, then give you some honey, you gotta do this for a couple hours, okay?
Okay, great, honey tastes better.
Yep, that does, like homemade ice cream, right? Very good. Okay, any other questions? The answers?
Donations to me.
On the way out, a new book out there. This is by Thomas Seeley. He's an entomologist, been around for a while. Following the Wild Bees. Just pick this up. It's a really good read. Basically, this talks about how to find feral colonies. So it's a really interesting scientific method of finding the feral colonies in your area. how to locate them. And basically you set up a little table with some sugar water, a little capturing device. And then you can track the bees as they fly back and forth. You move that table closer and closer. You mark the bee as it comes in, and then you time how long it took that bee that has been painted to go back to the hives and back in, and you can gauge how far away it is and just move in that direction, and you'll find that feral colony.
I think he's got a YouTube video out on it.
Yeah.
I've read that book a couple of years ago, and at the next meeting, I'll bring you Seeley's pattern of his bee box out
Okay.
of there, and you can show the group.
Right on.
To do that class from the Colorado State Association, do you go online and register there, Dwayne, or what do you do?
Yeah, you go online to this CBS, Colorado State Bee Association, and there's a place on there that's got a form. It's a Google form, and you fill it in, and you pay with PayPal at the end. And oh, yeah, and doesn't our minutes have a link on it like last month?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't.
But it's gonna be in this.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, I'll send it out in a couple days.
If you're going to the state bee in June, come up here and see me when we break out, so I can get everybody's name and number and see how many people she needs to help, and maybe I can get you folks in for free if you're willing to do a little bit of work.
Okay, well, happy beekeeping.
Thank you.
Let me go through some of these lines.